Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. On a chilly November evening in 2005, the quiet town of Maplewood was gripped by an unsettling stillness. Nestled between rolling hills and vibrant maple trees, the neighborhood was typically filled with laughter and the aroma of freshly baked pies wafting through the streets. However, on this particular night, a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, muted only by the distant calls of owls settling in for the night. At approximately 10:15 p.m., the tranquility shattered when a piercing shriek echoed through the shadows, drawing the attention of those still awake. From her front porch, Sarah Williamson, single mother of two, had just slipped into a cozy sweater. She noticed that hadn't seemed unusual at first. The Petersons often hosted impromptu get-togethers, yet something felt off. The voices were frantic, rising and falling in a cacophony of tension. Curiosity overcame her instincts, and Sarah moved closer to the house. As she approached, the hatch of dread tightened its grip on her. The door was ajar, swinging gently with the wind. She hesitated, her heart racing as she surveyed the dimly lit interior. Squinting into the darkness, Sarah called out hesitantly, "Is everything okay?" Silence answered her. A chill crept up her spine, laced with the instinctive knowledge that something was deeply wrong. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open wider, stepping cautiously into the home as the smell of something metallic filled the air. Deep down, Sarah thought this could be the night that would change Maplewood forever. The victim. Inside the Peterson residence, Sarah's senses were overwhelmed by an unsettling mix of shadows and silence. The dim light from a table lamp cast eerie shapes across the living room, where the curtains fluttered in the night breeze. As her eyes adjusted, she noticed the small, elegant decor, a reminder of the family's warmth. Smiling photographs lined the walls, capturing moments of joy. Family vacations, birthday celebrations, and the last holiday spent together. In stark contrast, the atmosphere was now riddled with an unspeakable tension, palpable in the way the air hung heavy around her. "Hello," she called again, inching forward, her heart pounding louder than her words. When she reached the kitchen, the stark reality of the situation became horrifically clear. There, on the cool tiled floor, lay Vanessa Peterson, the beloved mother of two, crumpled in a pool of crimson. Her lifeless body took the breath from Sarah's lungs, replacing it with dread. Vanessa's once vibrant presence now appeared as an unsettling calm, a stark reminder of life abruptly stolen. The house that had been a symbol of warmth and laughter now bore witness to something horrific. Frantically glancing around, Sarah's eyes darted to the countertop, where a knife glinted ominously among the clutter. It was a scene that clawed at the edges of reality. How had moments of laughter devolved into this desperate darkness? Within a heartbeat, Sarah's instincts kicked in, recognizing the gravity of her discovery. She retreated, her mind swirling with confusion and fear. This wasn't just an accident. This was a murder that would ripple through the fabric of their close-knit community, forever altering their lives. The scream that had escaped her moments earlier was one of an unwitting prophet, foretelling the chaos to come. The crime scene. As sirens wailed in the distance, an oppressive silence enveloped Sarah. In the Peterson kitchen, punctuated only by her quickening breaths, She stumbled outside, her stomach twisting in knots as she moved away from the horror inside. The cool night air rushed to meet her, providing little comfort as she collapsed onto the porch steps, trembling. Within moments, the blaring sirens grew closer, casting flashes of red and blue across the silent rows of houses. The hardened detectives of Maplewood had arrived without fanfare, but there was an urgency in their movement. Officer Mike Jensen was among the first on the scene, a veteran of a force who had seen his fair share of crises but couldn't shake the ominous weight of this one. Inside the house, he took in the gruesome sight, his experience telling him that every detail mattered. Vanessa's body lay in an unnatural position, her once bright eyes now dulled to an empty gaze, inviting hushed prayers for justice that would have to wait. Evidence was collected meticulously. Nearby, a blade gleamed in the light, stained with the remnants of violence. Around the kitchen, there were signs of struggle-broken ceramic pieces from a fallen plate and a chair overturned, as if the chaos had erupted in desperation. Each clue spoke volumes while remaining enigmatic. Officer Jensen marked the blood spatter patterns, attempting to reconstruct the timeline of the moments leading up to this tragic end. While canvassing the neighborhood, Officer Jensen noted the peculiar phenomena surrounding the case. People peered cautiously through drapes, whispers circulated like wildfire, fingers pointed in suspicion. Residents filed into the nearby precinct, offering alibis that felt rehearsed, bringing a greater tension to the air. This was more than just the death of a woman. It was a grim awakening for everyone in Maplewood. Beneath the town's idyllic facade lay secrets, creating a patchwork of darkness that would soon reveal itself. All they needed was time to unravel. The early investigation. The sun rose reluctantly over Maplewood, casting a pallid light over the town that had now become a fractured reflection of its former self. The stillness desperately clung to the edges of the neighborhood, a sharp contrast to the chaos that had unraveled overnight. News of Vanessa Peterson's murder spread like a contagion through the community, leaving apprehension hovering in the air. Detective Laura Hayes, a seasoned investigator known for her meticulous nature, arrived at the scene just as the morning fog began to dissipate. She felt the heavy weight of the case before stepping out of her car. Entering the Peterson home, her keen eyes absorbed the details. Each bloodstain, the errant dish, and the broken chair told a story. "Who found the body?" she asked, her voice steady, cutting through the heaviness. "Sarah Williams," Officer Jensen replied, his brow furrowed as he recalled the frantic phone call. She's shaken up pretty bad. Laura nodded, the wheels in her mind turning. Wheels in her mind. Let's get her statement. We need to understand the timeline before this blows up even more. The last thing we need is a fear-driven mob. As they approached Sarah, who sat under a makeshift awning set up in the front yard, Laura noticed the vivid contrast of the vibrant tree leaves against Sarah's pallid skin. She crouched to meet the woman's gaze, her expression soft yet professional. "Sarah, I know this is hard. But I need you to walk me through what you saw." Sarah inhaled. "I thought they were having a party. Do you remember hearing any arguments or unusual noises before you found her?" Laura pressed. moving to tragedy. As Sarah recounted the fragmented memories, the laughter turning to discontent, the door left ajar. Detective Hayes felt a growing urgency. The threads of the investigation began to weave a dark tapestry, and it was clear that behind closed doors lay secrets yet to be uncovered. The unfathomable paradox of their quiet town had shattered. Revealing the truth could be more sinister than anyone had dared to imagine. The dead ends. Days turned into weeks as the investigation into Vanessa Peterson's murder unfolded with relentless intensity. Detective Hayes and Officer Jensen followed every lead, digging through the intricate web of relationships that defined life in Maplewood. But with each turn, the case veered through an array of dead ends, each more frustrating than the last. They began by interviewing neighbors, who all seemed blissfully unaware of the turmoil hidden behind the walls of the Peterson home. Sarah Williams had been their chief witness, but as police dug deeper, inconsistencies surfaced in her account. One neighbor recalled hearing a loud argument just hours before Vanessa's death. But he didn't know the voice of the other person engaged. Another claimed to have seen someone lurking near the house, yet their description was vague and unhelpful. A tall figure wearing a dark hoodie. Frustrated, Detective Hayes pulled the case files into her office, viewing every detail with fresh eyes. The question of motive remained elusive, for Vanessa was known to be warm and personable, admired even by those she hadn't known closely. Was it a crime of passion? A case of mistaken identity? The police also looked into Vanessa's connections at work. She was the director of the local children's library, known for her dedication. When questioned, her colleagues painted a picture of her as someone kind but occasionally embroiled in spats with a competitive peer. Yet each suspect brought them back to square one. As the leads faded, the walls seemed to close in, and anticipation turned into doubt. One night, hunched over her desk, Detective Hayes received a breakthrough. A partial fingerprint lifted from the murder weapon had yielded a match. With fluttering hopes, she awaited the details. But what emerged was a name that sent shockwaves through her resolve. Jason Archibald, a man with a long history of petty crimes, but no prior association with the Peterson family. As the detective absorbed this new information, emotions clashed within her. Was it a breakthrough, or just another twist in a case that seemed eternally mired in ambiguity? She knew for certain that if they were to uncover the truth, they had to pursue this path. The desperate echo of a town still gnawed at her, begging for resolution amidst the pervasive fear. A break in the case, with Jason Archibald's name ringing in her ears. Detective Hayes felt a shift in the air, an urgency radiating from the fresh lead. Archibald, a local drifter known for his outbursts and troubled background, had been in and out of the Maplewood police station for years. Although his offenses were mostly petty theft and drunken disorderliness, they painted a picture of a man who struggled with his demons. On a frigid morning, Detective Hayes prepared to track him down, armed with the knowledge that sometimes the most dangerous criminals lurked behind a facade of forgettability. The precinct buzzed with activity, but her focus was singular. She knew Detective Jensen would comb through the neighborhood, seeking anyone who might have seen Archibald in proximity to the Peterson home. As she made her way to Archibald's last known address, a rundown boarding house on the outskirts of town, her mind raced. What if this lead led to something darker? The moment she stepped inside, The musty air cloaked her like a heavy shroud. The building was eerily quiet, punctuated only by the sound of a television flickering in the distance. Knocking at Archibald's door, she responded to a mix of anxiety and anticipation. A muffled voice grunted from inside, and after a moment's hesitation, the door creaked open to reveal a disheveled man with dark circles under his eyes. He evaded eye contact, glancing nervously back into the room. "Jason Archibald," she stated confidently, presenting her badge. "We need to talk about Vanessa Peterson." The look in his eyes shifted, a shaky blend of fear and recognition. "I didn't do it," he blurted out, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hurt her." Detective Hayes didn't respond right away, allowing the weight of his words to hang heavily between them. She observed his demeanor, sweetie palms, a violent twitch at the corner of his mouth. There was something there, a crack in his bravado. As she began to question him, it became clear that he was rattled. He claimed to have been nearby the night of the murder, but insisted he hadn't entered the house. Through his stuttered sentences, she pieced together a potentially explosive narrative one that involved unfinished business and a confrontation gone awry. Deep down, Detective Hayes recognized this could turn the tide. With a newfound focus, she left the boarding house knowing she'd struck a nerve. The curtains on this scene were beginning to peel back, pointing toward a hidden truth. In the murky depths of Maplewood's darkness, light was finally beginning to seep through. The suspect, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows through Maplewood streets. Detective Hayes felt the pressure build. Jason Archibald's denial echoed in her mind, blending with the weight of his anxious confession. He may have claimed innocence, but questions swirled like autumn leaves, suffocating the small town serenity. Those with secrets often cracked under pressure, and she intended to apply that weight. The next day, she gathered her team to devise a strategy centered around Archibald. They needed to dig into his recent actions, fully understanding what had led him to confront Vanessa that fateful night. Officer Jensen was already running down known contacts, while forensic specialists examined what little physical evidence remained. Meanwhile, Detective Hayes focused on building a psychological profile of their suspect. Archibald had lived a life battered by unremarkable scrutiny. He wasn't a hardened criminal, but certainly had an innate restlessness. What was it that drove someone like him to act? As she worked late into the night, she uncovered connections between Vanessa and Archibald's unplanned encounters at community events. Perhaps their lives had brushed against each other. Could it have ignited something dark and volatile? With the clock ticking, Hayes sought to track down any witnesses who might have seen them together in the days leading up to the murder. She reached out to a waitress from a local diner known to host many town gatherings in hopes of solidifying the timeline. "I remember Jason," the waitress recalled timidly. "He used to come in. Kind of made a scene when he found out Vanessa was there." Said she ignored him. "I thought he was just drunk. I had no idea." This led through a path for Hayes. She began pinpointing interactions between Vanessa and Archibald, coupled with the waitress's recollection of a heated dialogue that had ended with Archibald storming out. It was a vein of rage that had festered quietly, unyielding until it boiled over. With each detail, they constructed a framework around the night of the murder. Archibald had motive, however, fragile it might be. It became apparent that the confrontation they shared had spiraled out of hand in the darkness inside that seemingly ordinary home. In the early hours of morning, Hayes gathered the strength and determination of a woman on the verge of a breakthrough. It was time to confront Archibald again, to peel back layers of fear and rage. What had once been an unavoidable trajectory would soon spiral into something tangible. The truth lingered at the edges, waiting to emerge. The trial. The courtroom was a microcosm of tension as it filled with residents from Maplewood. Each faced the impassioned reality of loss, a convergence of grieving hearts gathered not only to bear witness to a trial, but also to seek solace in the pursuit of justice. Jason Archibald sat at the defendant's table, his demeanor a fragile mask of apathy, though his eyes betrayed flickers of guilt and unease. Detective Hayes stood at the back of the room, her heart pounding as the proceedings began. She had spent countless hours sorting through evidence, interviewing witnesses, and piecing together the story that had shattered the peace of their town. Now it felt like a culmination of that labor was about to unfold in front of a jury stranger tasked with sifting through the cacophony of emotions and facts. As the prosecutor laid out the case against Archibald, the narrative was clear and chilling. He was painted as a man haunted by a rejection, driven to fury by the perceived betrayal of a woman who had once acknowledged him with kindness. The chilling recount of that fateful night reverberated in the air. Witnesses testified about Archibald's confrontations with Vanessa, the simmering anger culminating in catastrophic consequences. Cross-examination brought about an undercurrent of unease. Archibald's defense attorney introduced doubt, suggesting that the evidence was circumstantial and calling into question the reliability of the witnesses. They argued that in the turbulent emotions surrounding a community tragedy, people often shouldered irrational fears and assumptions. Was Archibald merely a scapegoat within a web of collective grief? But then came the moment that sent guardian hearts racing. Hayes took the stand, the weight of her testimony imposing but resolute. She described the evidence with meticulous clarity, detailing the fingerprint found on the murder weapon and weaving together the timeline leading to the fatal confrontation. As she spoke, she projected conviction not just in her words, but in the memory of Vanessa Peterson, a woman whose life had been a beacon for many. The trial dragged on, and several days blurred together under the pressure of witness testimonies, forensic details, and echoes of disbelief. The community was simultaneously captivated and horrified. Many had grown to know Vanessa as an integral part of their everyday lives, and the specter of justice loomed large, felt deeply by everyone involved. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jury began their deliberation. Tension braided through the courtroom. Breaths hitched, prayers and hopes intertwined. No one knew what the verdict would be. But as the jury re-entered and the silence descended like a shroud, the importance of that moment weighed heavily on their collective conscience. When the foreman read the words "guilty of second-degree murder," waves of emotion swept through the room. Fractures of relief and despair, blossoming amidst tears and gasps. Justice had found its footing, albeit with the echo of an unhealed wound resonating through the very heart of Maplewood. As the gavel sounded, the realities of loss, grief, and the fragility of life melded as the trial left an indelible mark on a small town forever altered by tragedy. The aftermath. The gavel's echo faded, leaving a lingering silence that hung in the air like a heavy fog. In the weeks following the verdict, Maplewood bore the burden of its broken heart. The conviction of Jason Archibald, guilty of second-degree murder, did little to mend the fractures that had formed within the community, a wound that would require more than time to heal. At the edges of town, life attempted an awkward return to normalcy. Residents resumed their daily routines, yet an unspoken tension lingered in every corner. The vibrant conversations that once marked the town square were now tinged with caution, whispers subsiding into quiet glances. Children played, but mothers often lingered, eyes cast toward familiar houses, reawakening memories of laughter, now paved into an unsettling awareness of vulnerability. Shadows found herself walking a fine line. The case had been closed, but the gratification of having brought justice felt hollow against the backdrop of loss. Each day on the streets of Maplewood presented reminders of Vanessa, her children returning to school with a new reality, her absence haunting the hallways of the library, her friends gathered in morning circles where laughter had once flourished. Sarah Williams, who first discovered Vanessa's lifeless body, spiraled into a vigil of introspection. Guilt gnawed at her like a relentless tide, and supportive pats on the back felt oddly misplaced. For Sarah, the echoes of that night were too vivid to forget the frantic call she made. The quiet shadows inside that home, and the crimson stain that marked Vanessa's final chapter. She began attending support groups, seeking solace among those grappling with loss and grief. They were fellow travelers navigating through the grief-touched currents of their lives. In the twilight of fall, Detective Hayes found herself at the local community center, where a candlelight vigil was organized to honor Vanessa's memory. The flickering flames danced like fleeting spirits in the gathering dusk, illuminating faces marked with sorrow and resolve. As she stood among familiar faces, she heard the stories, shared hurdles, fought, lives influenced, hearts touched. It was a bittersweet affirmation of the connection they shared. In life, Vanessa had created a fabric threading the community together, but it was her tragic loss that now united them in grief. Well, come our side. With the grinding churn of life continuing, Detective Hayes silently vowed to channel the pain into purpose. The tragedy of Vanessa Peterson would not fade into obscurity. It would spark conversations about mental health, the importance of community awareness, and the need for vigilance. In the months that followed, the town began initiatives aimed at supporting families dealing with loss and trauma, merging grief into a catalyst for change. And so, while the shadows of that fateful night lingered over Maplewood, a flicker of hope began to rise. Through the aftermath of tragedy, the community found strength in one another, forging paths to healing that connected them in ways they had never understood before. In honoring Vanessa, they learned not only of love, but of the resilience woven into the heart of their town. Reflection. As winter settled over Maplewood, the town found itself wrapped in a blanket of snow, each pristine flake bringing a brief moment of tranquility to an otherwise tumultuous period. Detective Hayes often revisited the moments following the trial, allowing herself space to process the layered emotions swirling within. The cold, biting air reminded her that healing was also about embracing sorrow without shying away from it. Each time she walked the familiar streets, the spirit of Vanessa Peterson seemed to accompany her, echoing in the heartbeats of the community, where remembrance twisted into resilience. During her morning runs, Hayes would occasionally catch a glimpse of the children's book club gathering at the library, where a bittersweet joy illuminated their faces, shared through stories. A legacy woven by Vanessa. Those moments became her solace, signs of life re-emerging from tragedy. In quieter moments, when she found herself lost in thought, Hayes contemplated the complexities of human nature, the capacity for kindness, the fragility of life, and the shroud of pain that often clouded judgment. She recognized that behind every crime was a web of histories intertwining in unforeseen ways, moments that bred understanding and compassion within the brokenness. Through interviews, community meetings, and extended support for the children affected by the tragedy, Hayes realized that change was a slow, painstaking process. It meant confronting uncomfortable truths while uplifting one another amid the debris of heartbreak. The community's resolve, much like the changing seasons, marked a poignant reminder that while grief had nestled deeply within them, they could also nurture seeds of hope. As the first spring blooms began to emerge, Detective Hayes understood that Maplewood would never be the same. Vanessa's absence would forever echo in the hearts of its residents, yet their shared grief had ignited a call for unity and empowerment. Through reflection, they had the potential to transform their sorrow into a beacon that illuminated paths for future residents to tread upon, ensuring such darkness would never again overshadow their lives.